Superhero games have a long and colorful history in the gaming industry. That is to say, most of, but not all of them, have been pretty bad. Outside of the obvious Superman 64, most of the recent superhero games have been hitched with movie tie-ins, which always meant strict deadlines for development, and the end result? Well, you've seen the lists and you've heard the stories. Enough said. But out of the few out there that are actually pretty good, one series in particular stands out in my mind. The Batman Arkham series. These games show that not only can superhero games be good, but they can also be complemented with rich storytelling and set a quality standard for superhero games going forward. But with DC's gaming firestarter having come and gone, as far as we know anyway, there was always the question of what the evolution of that foundation would be. Enter Marvel's Spider-Man, a progression of what the Batman Arkham series started before it. Marvel's Spider-Man captures the essence of what makes the web-slinging, quip-bringing superhero a beloved household name. If Batman is the brooding loner with a dark past, then Spider-Man is a social butterfly hoping to get along with anyone and everyone. Marvel's Spider-Man is a superhero game that tries to put you in the mask of the hero himself, and even in the shoes of the person under the mask, Peter Parker. Right out of the gate, you're thrown into the large open sandbox of Manhattan, swinging your way to finally put Kingpin behind bars. The swinging mechanics are engaging on their own as they require a bit of understanding of, well, physics. When Spider-Man shoots out web to swing, it's not just going out into the wild ether of nothing like the many Spider-Man games that came before it, not including Spider-Man 2, of course. He needs leverage that weighs more than himself to swing. That leverage is the environment around him. In most cases, it's the tall buildings and skyscrapers he's swinging between. Without anything to attach webbing to, you can't swing, and you'll just fall to the ground, or at least until a swingable object comes into range. On top of this comes the idea of momentum and how to keep it to make sure you're getting around the city quickly. It takes a little bit to learn, but after a couple minutes of messing around with it, I was swinging around the city with ease, and it made traversal one of my favorite parts about the game. The city of Manhattan is a character in itself, as it's colorful, bright, and full of regular people that either love or hate Spider-Man. I found myself fishing for that depth by swinging through the city and falling to the ground level just to get reactions out of the citizens, and yes, even take selfies with them. But again, it's not all love for Spider-Man, as some of the citizens hate the idea of an unknown mass vigilante. And it seems like someone at Insomniac really took to the satire of a certain someone's InfoWars, with Jameson and his Just the Facts podcast.
Real listeners, brushheads they call themselves, though never quite understood why, will remember my warnings about the downright Orwellian crime monitoring system the city was installing.
That you can also unsubscribe to in-game if his ramblings start to grate on your sanity. I intentionally left this on for comedic value. There's some real good moments that definitely got a few laughs out of me while swinging through the city and fighting random crime breakouts that happen dynamically as you play, which you are rewarded for and not required to do. But all of this adds to a city that feels more alive than even the Arkham games were able to create and gives it its very own personality. But the narrative developments don't stop at the city alone. The cast of Marvel's Spider-Man are perhaps some of the most important aspects of the game itself. Spider-Man and Peter Parker's relationship with his family, friends, and yes, the villains are the shining star of the game's story. Peter is portrayed as a fresh out of college student struggling to keep his rent paid while working a job that may not pay well, but is part of his passion for science and discovery. And his relationship with his boss is enough to make any hardworking citizen jealous. It goes beyond employer to employee and crosses the line of friendship and admiration. Peter's relationship with his friends and family suggests that there's been quite a lot of history between the time he became Spider-Man up to the point where the game takes place, with him and Mary Jane being broken up while still harboring feelings for each other, all the while knowing that he's Spider-Man and being the only one that does. His relationship with Aunt May is endearing in that they both try to take care of each other and push each other forward after Uncle Ben's death. Meanwhile, Spider-Man's relationship with his villains establishes that they've been doing the good versus evil song and dance for quite a while.
You know what, Herman? You have like zero personality, but your suit is awesome. Can we talk design details? Maybe later.
I found myself in rapture with the stories of the characters in this game, admittedly more so than the gameplay itself, but let's talk about that, shall we? You might be thinking, does that mean the gameplay is bad? On the contrary, the gameplay is engaging all on its own. It opens up the doorway to experimentation as Spider-Man is fast, nimble, and incredibly responsive to control. But even as a superhero, you're not invincible, and when you take a hit, you take it hard. Spider-Man's gameplay is an evolution of the Batman Arkham combat where button mashing will only get you so far, and knowing when to dodge and counter is important to surviving. Where Batman used gadgets to thin out the herd, Spider-Man uses gadgets and the environment to get the upper hand. I was caught up in the idea of launching enemies, webbing them in the air, and slamming them to the ground, taking them out of commission instantly, and throwing web bombs into crowds to reduce their numbers. Or taking enemies' grenades and throwing them back at them, grabbing guns and throwing them back in their faces, or webbing up rockets to toss back at the shooter with a less than satisfying result, unfortunately, but you know, Spider-Man doesn't kill in all that. Spider-Man mixes things up by allowing you to play as other characters in stealth and investigation moments, which also helps establish that each character is independent and want to assist in keeping the city safe in any way they can. Though I will admit that I found these segments aren't the most enjoyable gameplay-wise. Overall, Spider-Man is a fantastic experience that I would recommend to fans of superheroes and superhero games alike, and especially to those that are looking for great open-world games that don't flood you with throwaway non-substantial side quests that do more to hurt the experience than help. It's a compelling experience that had me on my toes about what happens next from start to finish, and a technical marvel as one of the best looking games of the generation, which places it in the 5th slot for my top games of 2018.